Hey y'all, you are tuned into Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast. This is your girl, Lorraine Renee, also known as your Blog Queen. This is episode 31, a woman's thoughts on her anxiety, her relationships, and her awareness. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
It's showtime.
You're listening to the Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast.
These are just my thoughts.
With your host, Lorraine Renee.
A woman, her thoughts, and a mic.
Are you ready? Check this out.
Alright, y'all, so welcome back. Okay, so before any of y'all send for me, don't come for me, because I'm not sending, so don't come for me, I don't want to hear it. It's been a minute, I know, but listen, for good reason. I've been working on some things, I've been trying to check some things off my to-do list, I've been trying to, get my life together with my whole entire platform, right? So yeah, it's been a few weeks, but here I am, and I was anxious to do this particular episode because I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be a little bit more transparent in this particular episode. So again, we're talking about anxiety, and I feel like I can give a little bit more of a detailed perspective when it comes down to just talking about anxiety. And I say that because I've personally been dealing with anxiety for many, many years, and I've silently been dealing with it. And when I say silently, I just mean that I've not made the choice to really be vocal about what I'm dealing with and the extent of it. And I can literally probably count on a couple of fingers how many people I've actually opened up to about the intensity of the anxiety that I've dealt with. But I feel like this is a topic that I think that very many people women are going to be able to, men too, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be able to relate to this, and there's going to be some things that you hear that you're going to kind of, oh yeah, I get that, or yeah, I dealt with that, or I know exactly what she means by that. And I think that because anxiety is something that is very much present in our community right now, and you're going to hear a lot of people, we hear a lot of people talk about it. And I think right now, a lot of people are becoming more vocal with saying, I'm dealing with anxiety, or this causes anxiety. I do think there are people who may confuse having anxiety with just being stressed out about something. But when you know that you're dealing with anxiety, there is, there's certain, signs of what you're going through that kind of tells you yeah, this is anxiety that I'm dealing with. And I want to be able to use this episode as a resource for not only just being able to, this is kind of a safe space, and I want to talk about it, but I want to talk about it from a perspective of someone who is actually living it, right? Not just someone who just looked up information or or heard about it, or, I want to give it to you kind of raw, listen, I'm dealing with this shit, and I kind of know what I'm talking about. I know how this feels, and I know how hard it can be. And I want this episode to serve as that, just that sense of assurance that you're going to be okay, and you're going to be able to work through it, and that it's going to, it can subside. It can get better, but it's just going to take a little bit of work, and it's going to take awareness. So that is exactly why I wanted to title this episode, Her Anxiety, Her Relationships, and Her Awareness. Because when you're aware of something, you better handle it when you're aware of it, versus just going with the flow, or not even really paying attention to something, or just chalking everything up as stress. You may really be dealing with anxiety and not even realize that you're dealing with anxiety. So you need to be able to recognize it, but there's going to be things that you're doing as a result of certain situations you're in, or circumstances that come into your life. You're going to react to a certain type of way, and that is due to the anxiety that you've developed. Now, when I talk about it, I can say I can give this to you from a couple of different perspectives. I can give it to you from a perspective whereas you're dealing with anxiety and you're now in a relationship, and anxiety is affecting your relationship. I can give it to you that way, or I can completely spin this thing around, sis, and I can tell you that the relationship that you're in has caused a form of anxiety. It could be the fire starter. It can be the reason why you're dealing with this shit, and you may need to get out of that situation, right? There's got to be something's got to give. So I'm gonna do it from both perspectives. I feel like we're talking about it more, and I think we're just a little bit more comfortable with using our platforms to talk about it. I am generally a very private person, and I like to keep things and try to deal and overcome things on my own. I'm trying to get better at, not doing that all the time, and realizing that I do have certain individuals in my life that can help me with certain things, but I've just been stuck on this mode of like self-reliance and independence, and just trying to do things and deal with things on my own, to the point where I would try to like give therapy to my damn self. And so I want to talk to you, like, I want you to listen to this episode and just really feel like this is a safe space. And I want you to really feel like, all right, so it ain't just me. Because it's not. It's really not. And anxiety can be some deep shit, to the point where like you're physically feeling the anxiety. I will go through certain spells where I can be laying down and anxiety will kick in and just start fucking with my head like out of nowhere, to where I can't even breathe properly, because my mind has just gone so far into something, and it's going 100 miles per hour. It's crazy how this thing works. It's like you can be laying in bed and start thinking about all of these different things, have all of these thoughts, where it just feels like your mind can't even stay in one place for too long before it's going into the next thought. And oftentimes those thoughts are not always positive thoughts. A lot of them are negative thoughts. And so you can be in that situation, or you could be right there in that moment, and then just like that, your mind flips to something else, and it's doing this nonstop. So it's like your brain is running so fast, it's almost like you can't breathe. You know how when you're running and you run so fast, or you're exercising and you're going so fast and you lose your breath and you have to catch up with yourself? That is the same thing with anxiety. That is one of the side effects, or I don't know, symptoms, whatever you want to call it, of having anxiety, to where you will physically feel like you're having a panic attack, like you can't breathe properly, because you've just went somewhere in your mind that is just so far out there and you can't keep up with it. And I'm gonna tell you, like, it really feels like you're at, if I could like describe, I'm trying to give you a physical, it's like you're holding on to something, but you're at the very end of that rope. If it were a rope and you're just holding on to it, but it's like you're at the very, very end of it, you will feel a panic. And that's kind of how it is with your thoughts, where it's like you're starting to think of all of these scenarios in your mind, or think of all of these potential outcomes. You don't understand, or you don't know what's going to happen, and that intensifies the feeling. And you will get to a point where you just feel so completely lost. It's like, what do I do now? And so you have to learn how to ground yourself in that moment. So when we talk about relationships, so like if you're in a relationship, or you go into a relationship and you already have anxiety and you're dealing with things, because anxiety can come from a shit ton of things, right? Anxiety can come from past trauma. Anxiety can come from, how you grew up as a child. Anxiety can come from different experiences that you've had. So let's not necessarily say, we're going to first talk about how it can affect you in your relationship, affect you and your partner, and the relationship you have with each other. Because if you go into it with it, first of all, you have to be transparent about the fact that, hey, listen, I am dealing with this. Or I have gone through this in my life. At some point, if you're taking this relationship serious, you are going to have to be transparent about things that you've gone through in your life. There needs to be a discussion at some point, and I think earlier is better than later, so that your partner has a chance to like understand like who you are, what you've gone through, what you're trying to work through, and see how they can be of assistance to help you get through those things too, right? Because it's better when you have someone that you trust. And if you're with someone on an intimate level, as in you're sharing a bed with someone, you're sharing a life with someone, you're sharing a bank account with someone, you're sharing intimacy with someone, like you should be able to share that you're dealing with certain things. And at some point, it just needs to be laid out on the table. And you need to give that person the chance to say, okay, this is something that I want to deal with. She's worth it. I want to help her work through this. Or I don't know, this seems like a lot. And I don't know if the place that I'm at is ready to help her get through certain things, or I don't have the patience for that. And listen, don't blame that on the person if they don't have the capacity to take on what it is that you're dealing with, because you never know what another person can be dealing with. So the best thing for you to do is to put it all out there and not get mad if a person cannot. I just wish that as people, men would be more honest with women about what they want and what they're ready for, and vice versa, because I think that some women will do the same thing. They will hold back, or they won't fully disclose things that they are holding on to or that they've gone through. So I can go into a relationship and I can say, like, I've had some situations where I really got fucked over, and I have developed some trust issues, and that's true for myself. And so if I have to talk about what I've gone through with you, or if certain things that you do are going to trigger me and send me down this spiral of thoughts and emotions and trigger my anxiety because of what you're doing, you need to know what you're doing that's going to do that. And I don't think that that's enough reason. Like some might argue that, if you have trust issues, then you're not ready to get in a relationship. And if you go back and take a look at a past episode from the relaunch season, I talked about going into a relationship with trust issues, and how my personal opinion, I don't feel like just because you have trust issues that means that you can't get into a relationship. I don't agree with that. I think that it's okay for you to go into a new relationship if you have trust issues, but I just think there's a way that you have to do it, and I think that there's a certain level of disclosure you have to give to the person that you're getting ready to be, or that you're in a relationship with, right? But so how it affects your relationships. So if I go into this relationship and I got these trust issues, then yeah, there's going to be certain times where my anxiety is going to get triggered, and I'm going to feel like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I don't know where this is going. This relationship is taking me on an emotional roller coaster, and I feel like I need to get off, but I don't want to get off, but I feel like I need to. And it's going to take you, like I said, all over the place. So I think that when you are talking to your person, when you're talking to your man, you have to explain kind of where you're at. And you have to remember that this relationship is not the relationship that caused the whatever trauma, whatever it was, whatever situation it was. This is not that relationship. This is something different. Unless, on the flip side of that, this is a relationship that caused something, but we'll get there in a minute. But you have to remember that this isn't the relationship that is causing these alarms and these triggers to go off. It isn't that, right? So that's the first thing that you have to remember. And you need to be aware of, in that moment, when you are being like triggered to where you feel like your anxiety is about to take over. You can be in a relationship and feel like you don't know, like if you go into it because of trust issues, you can feel like, all right, this person is bound to cheat on me, and I know this is what's going to happen next, and I know that when I find out, all hell's gonna break loose because the next thing I'm gonna do is this, and then when this happens is that, and it's like I done put all this time in and I wasted this time, and like we did all of this for nothing. Like, you will just keep going. You will just keep going and keep going and keep going. So stop yourself in that moment and remember, this isn't that. This isn't that. And if we can remember to allow everybody the grace of a clean slate before we don't give them a clean slate, before we start pinning all this other stuff of what they could possibly do, or what we don't know if they're really doing it or not, or when they're not. Before we start there, start with a clean slate and check yourself before you go too far with that person, because you will literally run a person off with your anxiety because you have put something on them that they didn't ask for, number one. And number two, you've just characterized them based on something that you have before. And that's why it's very important to talk about these types of personal things up front and really, really allow a person to say, you know what, I understand what it is that you're explaining to me, and I'm going to help you get through that. I'm going to help you get through that. In your relationships, when you have anxiety, like for me, going into a relationship with a trust issue and then attempting to have a successful long distance relationship, that shit was colliding. It wasn't working, and it was only triggering my anxiety because I felt like, okay, the distance is only going to create like an emotional distance between us, and it's just only going to create all of these different barriers to where it's not even going to work. But I wasn't even giving it a chance to fail, if that makes sense. Not saying that I wanted it to fail, but it's like I was already expecting it to fail because I felt like, okay, I know it's not going to work because, if you don't do this, that, and the third, you can't be successful at it. But like, do you see how that was already just like setting my life up, setting my relationship up for failure without anything even emerging yet? Nothing happened to where I had to believe that it wasn't going to work. And then I was able to work through it and get to the point where then, okay, it's not even long distance and we made it past that. Of course, you will always have challenges and things in your relationship that you got to deal with. But, it wasn't anything that we weren't able to work through when it surfaced at that time, right? So you wait for it. I don't want to say wait for things to happen, but when they do come up, then that's when you deal with it. But anxiety is going to tell your ass to do something different. Anxiety is going to tell you, oh, it's coming. And when it comes, it's going to be some bull. It's really going to mess with you. It's not going to work. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. Anxiety will tell you all of the things that are the worst possible outcome for that situation. And by situation, we're talking about relationships here, right? So your anxiety is going to tell you that the relationship is doomed. That's what it's really going to do. And it's like, you haven't even gone through it yet. You haven't even allowed anything to even remotely surface for you to even think that it's going to, just be destroyed, not work, be a waste of time. And that's what I want. That's where we have to get out of, right? That's the point where we have to train ourselves in that moment to say, okay, it's not, this is all in my head. It's all in my head, and I have to get to a different place. And when you're in a serious relationship and it's something that you really see as you want to work towards, make sure that you're not allowing the anxiety that you have drain everything that you do have in that person, because you're going to find someone who is willing to work through you, but they're only human too. So it's like there's only so much that they can take before it starts taking away from who they are as a person, or starts mentally draining them. And then that is how you could potentially run a person off, when you're draining them so much off of how your mind is working, right? And then if you're in this relationship and you're always talking about what could go wrong, and always talking about all of these problems, and always talking about all of these issues that you have, and always talking about the anxiety that you have, if that is like something that is a constant in the relationship, then it's like you're kind of taking center stage in the relationship, right? To where they may feel like they don't even really have the space to even come to you with anything that they may be dealing with, right? Because then they may feel like you don't have the capacity to even help them through their shit. And if a person feels like you don't have the capacity, or you feel like they don't have the capacity, how far is your relationship really going to go, right? So if you're always on 10 because of your anxiety, like they may begin to, after a while, it may start to, it may become a burden. Because when we're in a relationship, we want it to be equal, and we want to feel like I want to feel like I can talk to you, you can talk to me, I can vent to you, you can vent to me. But if it just seems like 95% of the time, like Lorraine is on 10, and it's always about the shit that she feels, or that she's going through, or that she is afraid of, or worried about, or unsure of all the time, then when does Bae have the opportunity to come to me and say like, hey, today I need to talk to you about this, or I'm feeling this type of way? And that's why, like I said, if you feel like you need to speak with someone outside of your relationship, let's not shoot therapy down before we actually try it. Let's normalize therapy, and let's understand that yes, your partner is supposed to be a safe space, and yes, you can vent to your partner, but it is also very healthy to have someone outside of that situation. And I definitely don't really recommend you going to someone personal, like in your family or your close friends, because you want to keep certain things private in your relationship, and you want to keep certain things just between the two of you. So you don't want any biased, opinions or feedback or anything like that. You don't want to just be going to his sister, or you don't want to always talk to her dad about things, just whatever. So, if you need to go to a third party to handle those types of things, then let's not sleep on that. Let's be okay with, because you need to be able to, at the end of the day, you need to be able to still have, within you, you need to still be a reliable partner to your person, and still allow them to feel safe, and still allow them to feel a certain type of way in the relationship as well, right? But also on the flip side of that, because there's like the oversharing and the overburden and all of that, you don't want to hold a lot of that in. And I think for me, that was the part that I had to get out of, where you're holding a lot of stuff in, and you're not letting them know what's going on. So if you're not transparent about the fact that you do deal with anxiety, and your ass is just spazzing out, and they don't even know why you spazzing out, it's just like every other day is something wrong with you, or you thinking the worst. Like, why are you thinking the worst? And people don't know what they don't know. You know what I'm saying? So fill them in on what it is that you're thinking and what you're feeling. And when you have these thoughts, these really anxious thoughts, it's like very easy to want to keep, try to bottle those up and try to, ignore them. But then realize that when you do that, they are eventually going to show their ugly faces at some point. And they may come out in other ways. Your attitude, your energy may be off. something else may be off. It may affect your sexual life. You're just, there's a lot of ways that because then it does become stress that you just kind of like compressed down and bottled up, and you really aren't really allowing yourself to decompress from it. So it's going to come out at some way, and sometimes it'll come out in the form of you lashing out on a person. And the last thing that you want to do is lash out on the person who loves you the most, the person that you love the most. You don't want to do that. Now, you're only human. So, things are, you're not going to be at your best all of the time. And that's why it's important for you to find the right person to kind of help balance you out, right? And get that reassurance from them. And you can do that. You can get the reassurance that you need, but find the right balance of getting reassurance, right? Because I was just recently watching this show, and I was watching a show, and I don't know if you guys are, whoever's listening, if you guys have watched Love at First Sight, or not Love at First Sight, Love is Blind. And they're in the second season, and I was just analyzing this one couple, and she was very vocal about the fact that she's very insecure about a lot of things. And just from watching her and listening to her in certain conversations and little arguments that she had with the person that she's now engaged with, it was very stressful to hear, because it was like she was looking for reassurance that he wasn't familiar with providing her with. And so if the person isn't familiar with it, it's foreign to them, and they have to be able to understand exactly what you need. But also, I saw where there was too much of what she was unloading on him, and it was so early on to where he's not even really accustomed to exactly how to give you what you need. He was trying to reassure her, but it was just too much for that moment. And I think that we have to figure out what that balance is between, asking for reassurance and not needing too much of it, and allowing it to just, put a chokehold on a relationship. You know what I'm saying? So if you are feeling anxious about certain things, and you're always projecting those thoughts and feelings onto the relationship, then how can you expect that relationship to stand firm if on your end, right? Because it takes two people to make the foundation of a relationship work. You can't just put it all on one person. But if from your end, you're projecting all of this anxious, negative energy and anxiety into it, it's like your side is a little bit unstable in that area, and it's not going to be the foundation that you guys both are going to be able to continue to be successful in the relationship. So when you're putting it all on there, just be aware of what you're doing. One of the things about managing your anxiety is to recognize when it's turned on at the moment, because it's almost, to me, I look at it as just like this switch, and this switch gets flipped. And it will flip, and it will, it can flip on at any time, and it's going to take a moment to realize, shit, my switch is flipped. Let me figure out how to turn it back off. And that's where we learn our grounding techniques and coping mechanisms for dealing with anxiety, which, like I said, we're going to get into that shortly. But, so yeah, you have to remember that, you have to, learn how to maneuver through in those moments. And then on the flip side of that, when you're dealing with I would say like a relationship that is causing you to feel anxious or causing you to develop anxiety. I think that is almost just as bad as going into the relationship with anxiety, because then it's like, that's kind of like you being in a situation, willingly being in a situation that you know is not good for you, but you have to be able to recognize what it's doing. So if this relationship is making you feel some kind of way, let's start breaking down some of these things. If you're unsure about a person, if you feel like you have settled in a relationship where it's like, you know, at the end of the day that this is not giving what it's supposed to give, that will allow you to develop a form of anxiety, because you are settling in something that you know, like you mentally know this isn't right. But for whatever reason, because you want to be married, or because you want to have somebody, or because you don't want to be alone, or because you don't want to sleep alone, or because you want to say you have someone, you're settling. Well, you can settle and tell everybody on the outside, and you can change your status on Facebook to say I'm in a relationship, and you can take somebody home on the holidays to your family, and you could do all of these things. You can have a +1 to all your friends' weddings and stuff like that. And you could do all of the things that relationship is going to allow you to physically do. But if emotionally you know that you're settling, and you know that this person is just dogging the shit out of you, or this person is being emotionally abusive to you or physically abusive to you, you know that this person is not being faithful to you, and they're just literally being disrespectful to you, if you know that this is just not a good person, but you just, for the sake of wanting to be in a relationship, you're just staying in this relationship, that means you're just settling. For whatever your reasons are for settling, that's going to, I'm telling you, that is going to cause a form of anxiety that is really going to project in an awful, awful light. You are really going to become bitter. You are going to become so unhappy. You are going to look at other people's relationships that do appear happy, whether you know what they got going on personally or not, but anything that looks good or anything that seems positive or happy or beautiful, black love, like any of that, you're going to become bitter towards that, because you know at the end of the day that your relationship is not happy, and you don't even know what the hell they're going through or what they got going on behind closed doors. But it's just like, I don't know it, but it's probably better than what I'm dealing with. And so you're going to look at that, and it's really going to trigger you, and it's going to cause you to really have this unsettled feeling, and you're going to be anxious about a lot of shit too. And it's like, you know, because you're settling, it's like, you know, this ain't good for you. You know, it's not good. You can, you know, if this person is making you, if you know that this is not, even if this person isn't necessarily doing you wrong, but you know that this person is just like not the kind of person that you want to share your life with. They're not a good person generally. You know, a narcissist person, a person who just has a lot of baggage theirself, a person that just, you know at the end of the day is not right for you. That's going to cause anxiety as well. And you can do certain things when you know a person isn't right for you. You can do things such as like self-sabotage, and you're doing that because it's like at the end of the day, you know it's not right. But let me tell you something about self-sabotage. That's stressful, Because when you do that, it's like you're inflicting this stress upon yourself in order to get out of a situation, or in order for a situation to have different results or a different outcome, or in an effort to try to make the other person do certain things or respond a certain way or react a certain way, or to be able to try to push a person out of your life because you don't have the strength to walk away from that person. That type of self-sabotage is what I'm talking about. And that is going to cause a lot of stress in itself, and that is going to like inflict a certain level of anxiety upon you as well. So don't don't settle in these relationships that you know are not adding any type of value to you. Don't overlook the things that you know that you need, or that you know that you deserve, that you know that you want. Don't overlook those things just in an effort to be in a relationship with someone. Titles have become so important to people, and I think women get to a certain age where they are just really ready to have the life that they dreamed of, and they will do that by any means, right? They will get whatever it is that they need, not anything that they need, but they will compromise themselves in order to be in a relationship, and they will miss out on things that they actually need just to say, oh, well, I do have a man, you know what I'm saying? But like, what is that man doing for you? How is he adding value? Or like, what is this relationship actually, doing to your life? Is it really good, or is it really bad? And you have to be aware of that, because then you're able to, like, step one is the awareness. Step one is always the awareness. If you're not identifying, or if you're not saying, okay, yes, this is a problem for me, or this is an issue, or this is something that I lack. If you're not even there, you got a long way to go. And even still then, when you do that, you do have a long way to go, but that's the first part. The first part is the awareness and realizing how it is setting your anxiety off, how it is affecting you, and just what you have to, what you have to do to get through it. So I think, like I said, I feel like that's kind of a way that it can possibly be almost as worse as going into it. Like when you develop, when the relationship that you've gotten into is what's brought on this new found anxiety, that's pretty bad. It can even be a situation where, like, you were fine, but like I said, certain people and certain things will trigger things in you. And if this person is bringing out insecurities about you, if this person is saying certain things on the slide, and it's like, okay, he's kind of said that a lot, and then it's starting to create this insecurity. Well, like, does he even really care about me? Or like, is he only here because of this? Or like, how does he feel about me, how I look? Or if that person isn't bringing the very best out of you, but also being able to nurture the worst parts of you without having to compromise themselves and who they are and what they're able to handle, then it's worth looking into the bigger picture of it. It's worth really looking in to see if this is something that you even need to be connected to. Right? Like, our relationships are so important, and intimate relationships specifically, you are ultimately you're blending your life with someone. Do you know how major that is? And when you're intimate and you're creating this soul tie to a person, like, I believe in soul ties. I don't know about y'all. If you listening, I don't know. But I really legitimately believe that through intimacy, you definitely can take on a person's burdens and energy and demons and things like that. I believe in that 100%. And I think that there is a transfer of energy, and intimacy is a very strong form of transfer of intimacy. It's very strong. And so you have to be mindful of how you are intertwining yourself and your body and your energy and how you're, intertwining that with another individual. And especially when you're intimate, because, as always, there's always a chance of creating life with someone. And like, do you want to create a life with someone when they have all of this other unattended shit and baggage that they need to work through themselves? Not to say that people can't change things and people can't fix things and they can't work on things. Like, of course, people can work on things, but it's just like I said, it is the number one thing to just be aware and also just be careful of how you proceed into things. Just like really making sure that it's something that is more helpful than harmful. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hope, because I just said a lot in the past 40 minutes. And honestly, I really feel like there's a lot to pack into this. And so I don't know, maybe I need to do another part to this. Maybe I need to make this like part 1 of, relationships and anxiety, and do another part, because I really feel like there's a lot of, just a lot more that I can get into about this. But, be aware of the commitment that you're making to a person. And that's another thing, like commitment issues. When you have commitment issues, if you're not even really ready, so let's not even talk about how you go, so you go into a relationship and you may have trust or you may have anxiety. So we talked about how that can affect your relationship. Then we talked about how the relationship that you're in could possibly be causing anxiety. But let's also talk about how commitment issues causes anxiety, right? So if you really truly know you're not even ready to be in a relationship, and you don't need to be with nobody. It's not even that this person isn't the right person. You don't need to be with no one, because let me tell you something. Everybody has a season where they need to be by their damn self. Everybody has, and it may be when they're younger versus when they're older, or it could be when they're older. You could have gotten married younger and been in a really bad relationship and got out of it and got a divorce, and you try to jump into the next thing that comes along and you're not even really ready for it. Or you just are playing with people's time if you have these commitment issues, because let me tell you something. I really truly believe that was something that I dealt with too. Commitment issues is kind of where it's like you get close to a person and they're not really, you're just not ready. You're just not at a place of peace, or you have other things in your life that you need to continue to work on yourself before you can move into that space of being in a relationship. Or it's like you think you want all of these things with the person, and then you have these things in front of you and you start feeling a certain type of way and you start doing things and you will push them away because you're just not really ready for it. And I think that I feel like some men have commitment, and you know what, women do too, but I'm gonna get on the men, because hey, this is my space and I'm gonna get on their ass. But I feel like men are not even ready to get into relationships with people, and they will do that. But I feel like they still have commitment issues. Like, it's like they're just not really ready. They're not at the point of their life where they're ready to give up, quote unquote, give up certain parts of them or certain parts of their lifestyle. And it's like almost to the point where they just got it's like they got this person in their life and they don't want to lose this person, but they still ain't really ready to, go all the way with the person. And that is a form of having a commitment issue. And I feel like that will bring on an anxiety, because then you start just looking for the wrong, you start looking for the bad, you start looking for the ugly. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this here, because this I think I have a lot more that I want to talk about. So we're going to do this as part 1 to talking about anxiety in relationships and how it affects it. And you guys have to stay tuned for part 2. I'm going to do a second part to this, and I'm going to close this episode out here at this point. Y'all know I don't like to go over the 45-minute mark in my episodes. I like to stop way before. But so I'm going to close it out, y'all. We'll do part 2 next week. All right, y'all. Peace and blessings.
Let's do this.
It's showtime.
You're listening to the Thoughts of a Blog Queen podcast
These are just my thoughts.
with your host, LaRae Renee.
A woman, her thoughts, and a mic.
Are you ready? Check this out.